The universe has a sixth sense of humor. Trust me, I know. I have been studying those bizarre bipedal mammals called humans for what feels like several lifetimes now. And just when I thought I had them figured out, they showed us exactly why poking the sleeping beast was the worst mistake our collective ever made. My name is Taz'Korr. I'm what humans might call an anthropologist, though that term feels hilariously inappropriate considering I'm documenting aliens from my perspective. The High Council assigned me to observe Earth decades before we revealed ourselves. Know thy enemy, and all that nonsense. Except the Council never bothered to listen when I told them humans weren't our enemies. They were something far more dangerous, a species with untapped potential that should be approached with extreme caution. But no, Admiral Blackwell just had to flex his 6 tentacles and demonstrate our superiority. A primitive species barely out of their atmosphere, they will surrender within 1 rotation. His smug voice still echoes in my nightmares. 3 standard years later. Half our fleet is space dust. Our homeworld is under a blockade of human warships that appeared out of nowhere, and I'm hiding in a bunker on some backwater moon, recording what might be my final report before the humans find me too. Let me back up and explain how they screwed everything up so monumentally that a tea started on what humans call a Tuesday. The Council decided Earth had resources we needed, primarily water and certain rare minerals. Rather than negotiating or, asking if they'd be willing to trade, Admiral Blackwell insisted on the traditional approach. Send in a fleet, demonstrate overwhelming firepower, accept their surrender, then extract the resources while keeping the natives compliant through fear. Works on most species. Most rational beings recognize superior technology and don't commit suicide by fighting back. Humans, as it turns out, are not most species. Our first wave targeted their military installations. We knocked out several bases, crippled some naval vessels, and destroyed a few Air Force squadrons. Standard intimidation tactics. Then we broadcast our demands to their leaders: surrender or face extinction. The response: a human female with short gray hair and a face like carved stone appeared on our view screens. She wore what I recognized as their military uniform with numerous decorations. Admiral Joan Blackwell of the United Earth Defense Force, a position I hadn't even known existed. "We have been waiting for you," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "For decades, we have prepared for first contact. We hoped it would be peaceful. You have made your choice. Now we will make ours." Blackwell laughed at this. "Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology. Surrender now, and your species may survive as our subjects." Admiral Blackwell's smile widened slightly. "You misunderstand. We are not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with us." Then she terminated the communication. Within hours, our sensors detected movement from behind their moon. Ships, not the clunky, fuel-burning rockets we'd observed them using, but sleek vessels with propulsion systems our scanners couldn't identify. Their orbital defense platforms, which we dismissed as primitive satellite technology, suddenly powered up with energy signatures that made our tactical officers panic. "How?" Blackwell demanded. "How?" They were burning fossil fuels just decades ago. I tried to explain it then, this human trait I'd observed called compartmentalization. Their governments have been hiding their true technological progress, keeping advanced research secret even from their own citizens. They've been preparing for us, or someone like us, for generations. What happened next was, well, the only word I have for it is slaughter. Human vessels moved in ways that defied our understanding of physics. Their weapons bypassed our shields as if they weren't even there. Later we learned they'd been studying our ships ever since one crashed in a place called Roswell. They'd had decades to understand our technology and develop countermeasures. But it wasn't just their unexpected technological prowess that shocked us. It was their ruthless efficiency. The way they fought wasn't like any species we'd encountered. Most civilizations we'd conquered fought defensively, trying to protect their populations and infrastructure. Humans? They went straight for the kill every time. No hesitation, no mercy, just cold, calculated destruction. When our surviving ships retreated to regroup, the humans followed. Not just to the edge of their system, but beyond. They pursued our vessels relentlessly, picking them off one by one. Fleet communications were filled with panicked distress calls until they simply stopped. I was on a science vessel observing from a distance. We weren't armed, weren't considered a threat. That's probably the only reason I survived the initial engagement. We fled, hoping to warn the home world. We were too late. By the time we arrived, humans had somehow reverse-engineered our faster-than-light technology. They reached our colony worlds before we could mobilize a proper defense. One by one, our outposts went dark. The Council was stunned. How could this happen? We were the collective conquerors of 17 star systems. These were primitive apes who had been throwing spears at each other just a few millennia ago. Then came the transmission that still haunts my sleep cycles that a different human appeared on our screens. Not a military leader this time, but a civilian male with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that looked ancient somehow. President Darius Jackson of the United Earth Government. People of the collective, he began, his voice disconcertingly calm. You came to our home uninvited. You attacked without provocation. You demanded our surrender. Now, let me tell you what happens next. He leaned forward, those cold eyes seeming to stare directly at each of us. Throughout our history, humans have fought each other constantly. We have developed the art of warfare to levels that would horrify most sentient species. We have gotten really good at killing. But over the last century, we have tried to be better. We have tried peace. We have tried unity. We were hoping, praying, that when we finally met other intelligent life, we could put our violent past behind us. His expression hardened. You have robbed us of that hope. You have reminded us of who we truly are. And for that, I almost want to thank you. Because now we don't have to pretend anymore. He smiled then, and it was terrifying. We are coming for your leadership. Not your civilians, not your colonies. Just the ones who decided attacking Earth was a good idea. You have 24 hours to surrender them. After that, well, we will show you why humans have always feared other humans more than any monster we could imagine. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. Of course, the council refused to surrender anyone. Pride and arrogance, the dual cancers that would ultimately destroy us. 25 hours later, our planetary defense grid detected a single human ship approaching. Just one. We prepared to destroy it, almost laughing at their foolishness. The ship bypassed our defenses as if they weren't there. It landed directly on the council spire, our seat of government. Before our military could respond, a group of humans emerged. Just 5 of them, wearing some kind of armored exoskeletons. What happened next was, I struggled to describe it. They moved through the spire like living shadows. Our security forces, the best in the collective, couldn't touch them, couldn't even slow them down. Security feeds showed them walking calmly through hails of plasma fire, their armor absorbing or deflecting everything we threw at them. They reached the council chamber and extracted, not killed, extracted every member who had voted for the Earth invasion. Precisely those members. No one else was harmed. The entire operation took less than 30 minutes. They returned to their ship with their captives and departed, again simply ignoring our defense systems. 3 days later, those council members were returned to us. Alive, physically unharmed, but changed. Their minds had been altered somehow. They stepped off the human vessel and immediately confessed to crimes against sentient beings, surrendered their positions, and provided detailed tactical information about all our military assets that we later discovered microscopic machines in their bloodstreams. Nanites that had rewritten portions of their neural pathways. Not enough to control them completely, but enough to remove certain barriers, like the ability to lie or withhold information when questioned about their military decisions. That was when the true panic set in. If humans could do this, could selectively alter minds with technology so advanced we couldn't even detect it initially, what else were they capable of? What kind of monsters had we awakened? The next few months were chaos. Our military tried to regroup and launch counteroffensives, but the humans were always one step ahead. It was as if they could predict our every move. Some believed they'd somehow accessed our communication networks. But I suspected something more disturbing. They understood how we think better than we understood ourselves. Soon, human ships blockaded our homeworld. They didn't attack civilian targets. They didn't bombard our cities. They simply waited, picking off any military vessel that tried to break through. The message was clear: surrender your military leadership and abandon all conquest ambitions, or slowly wither as your supply lines are cut off. Half our colonies capitulated immediately, seeing which way the solar winds were blowing. The others held out until their resources dwindled. One by one, they surrendered. Throughout all this, not a single civilian in the collective was harmed by human forces. Not one. They targeted our military with surgical precision, dismantling our ability to make war without ever becoming the monsters we'd accused them of being. It was humiliating, devastating to our cultural identity. We had always seen ourselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. Now we were being treated like misbehaving children. When a last holdout colony surrendered 6 months after the initial invasion, humanity sent a delegation to dictate terms. I was called in as a human expert to advise our interim government. Their terms were surprisingly lenient. No reparations, no occupation, no resource extraction. Just 3 conditions. 1. Dismantle all offensive military capability beyond what's needed for basic planetary defense. Point 2. Accept human observers in our government for a period of 50 Earth years. Point 3. Join what they called the Galactic Accords, a set of principles for interspecies relations that prohibited unprovoked aggression and guaranteed the sovereignty of all sentient civilizations. When our negotiator asked why they weren't demanding more, why they weren't taking our worlds or resources as we would have taken theirs, their representative, a human female named Dr. Petra Novak, smiled sadly. Because we have already been where you are, she said. Throughout our history, we have had conquerors who thought military might gave them the right to subjugate others. They always fell. Always. We learned that lesson through blood and fire, so you don't have to. Consider it our gift to you. As she turned to leave, she paused and looked directly at me. Your reports are quite thorough, Taz'Korr. You understood us better than the others. Perhaps in time, your people will listen to those who counsel understanding over dominance. I felt a chill run through all 4 of my hearts. They had accessed our most secure files, had known about me all along. Later that night, I found a small device in my quarters with a recorded message from Admiral Blackwell herself. We read your assessments of humanity. You got some things right, many things wrong, but you try to understand us instead of just categorizing us as prey. That counts for something. The device this message came on contains historical records we think your people should see. Our wars, our atrocities, and how we overcame our worst instincts. Study them. Learn from our mistakes so you don't repeat them. Because if there's one thing humans excel at, it's learning to be better after nearly destroying ourselves. That was 3 years ago. The blockade remains, though it's gradually being reduced as we comply with the terms. Human observers walk our halls of power, rarely speaking but always watching. Our military has been reduced to a planetary defense force. Our once mighty collective is now just another signatory to the Galactic Accords. And here's the most terrifying part. We have since learned that humans were holding back, significantly holding back. The technology they deployed against us was deliberately limited. They showed just enough to defeat us decisively, while keeping their true capabilities hidden. Why? That's the question that keeps me awake during sleep cycles. Why demonstrate only a fraction of their power? The answer, I believe, lies in something I have observed repeatedly in human behavior. They're playing a longer game than we can comprehend. They didn't want to completely terrify the galaxy by showing everything they can do. They wanted to send a message that would spread to other species. Leave humans alone, but don't be so afraid that you'd never consider peaceful contact, that it's calculated. Surgical, terrifyingly intelligent. And that, ultimately, is why I'm recording this warning from my hidden bunker. Not because I fear human retribution. They have proven remarkably true to their word about not harming civilians. But because I fear what comes next. You see, 6 days ago, our long-range sensors detected 3 unknown fleet signatures entering the edge of charted space. Not human, not from any known species. And they are heading straight for human territory that I have sent warnings, of course. Used every channel I know. But I keep thinking about the human president's words years ago. You have reminded us of who we truly are. Now we don't have to pretend anymore. The galaxy is about to discover what happens when humans are given a reason to deploy their full military might. And may whatever gods exist have mercy on those poor, foolish creatures who thought attacking Earth was a good idea. Because humans? They have been waiting for this. I have studied them long enough to know one fundamental truth. Deep down, some part of them has been itching for a legitimate reason to unleash hell. And now they have those new fleet signatures I mentioned. They belong to the Kravox Dominion. If you haven't heard of them, consider yourself fortunate. While my people, the collective, fancied ourselves conquerors, the Kravox make us look like peaceful gardeners by comparison. They consume not just resources but entire biospheres. They strip planets down to the bedrock, harvesting every useful molecule before moving on. No negotiations, no terms of surrender, just systematic extinction of anything in their path that we detected their long-range probes decades ago, but kept that information classified. The Council determined they were still centuries from reaching our region of space. Apparently, that assessment was catastrophically wrong. When the human observers learned about the approaching Kravox fleets, their reaction was unexpected. I was monitoring communications from my bunker when the transmission came through. The human observer assigned to our provisional government, a stoic man named Haruki Tanaka, received the news with unsettling calmness. Confirmed Kravox biosignatures, he asked, his expression completely neutral. When our intelligence officer nodded, Tanaka's lips curved into what I've come to recognize as a smile, though it held no warmth whatsoever. Excellent, he said, tapping his communication device. Earth Command, this is Observer Tanaka. Please inform Admiral Blackwell we have a code Prometheus situation. Yes, confirmed. Thank you. He turned back to our stunned leadership council. You should prepare your civilian shelters. Not because the Kravox will reach you. They won't, but because the space between here and their fleet is about to become energetically unstable. What does that mean? Demanded Provisional Governor Nextarl. Tanaka's smile widened slightly. It means humanity finally gets to field test our new toys. Within 12 hours, the human blockade around our system began to disperse. Not retreating, but repositioning, moving with purpose toward intercept trajectories with the Kravox fleet. Our long-range sensors tracked them as they accelerated to speeds we'd never seen their ships achieve before. 3 days later, the real show started. I'm not a military tactician. My understanding of advanced physics is limited to what's needed for anthropological research. But even I could tell that what happened next violated several laws of physics as we understand them. The human vessels didn't simply engage the Kravox fleet. They unmated. Our sensors detected massive gravitational distortions as human ships executed maneuvers that should have turned their crews into organic paste. They appeared to phase in and out of normal space-time, becoming momentarily intangible before reappearing elsewhere. Some seemed to split into multiple copies, confusing Kravox targeting systems. The weapons they deployed weren't just advanced, they were apocalyptic. Directed energy weapons that didn't just punch through Kravox shields but seemed to invert them, turning their protective barriers into implosive forces that crushed their own ships. Missiles that appeared to bend space around their targets, creating localized singularities that tore Kravox vessels apart at the atomic level. Most terrifying of all were the devices they called NEMESIS Platforms. Unmanned weapon systems about the size of a small shuttle that, when deployed, unfurled into impossible geometric configurations. Our mathematicians later told me these shapes couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. They incorporated higher-dimensional mathematics that caused severe headaches just trying to model them. These NEMESIS platforms would approach Kravox ships and simply delete portions of them. No explosions, no debris. Just sections of hull, weaponry, and presumably crew vanishing as if they'd never existed. as if reality itself was being selectively edited. The entire engagement lasted less than 6 hours. When it ended, the first Kravox fleet, over 300 ships that had terrorized 7 galactic sectors, was simply gone. Not destroyed in the conventional sense. Gone that I remember watching the sensor feeds with a growing sense of existential dread. This wasn't warfare as we understood it. This was something else entirely. That night, I received an unexpected visitor to my bunker. Dr. Petra Novak, the same human representative who had delivered their terms years earlier, somehow bypassed all my security measures and was simply sitting in my living space when I returned from the observation center. "Your hiding spot is quite clever," she said conversationally, as if breaking into a secured bunker was perfectly normal. "We have known about it since you built it, of course, but we respected your need for a security blanket." I should have been terrified, but at that point, I was too numb from what I'd witnessed. "What do you want from me?" "Information," she replied, sliding a data crystal across the table. "This contains everything we know about the Kravox. Their biology, psychology, social structure, technology. We need someone who understands xenoanthropology to fill in the gaps." "Why me?" I asked. "You have your own experts." "Yes, but none with your particular perspective. You studied humans as potential enemies while seeing our capacity for both destruction and creation. That dual vision is rare, even among our own people." She leaned forward. "The Kravox aren't finished. What you saw today was just their advanced fleet. Their main force, thousands of ships, is still coming." A cold dread settled in my primary stomach. "After what I witnessed, does it matter? Your weapons are powerful but not unlimited," she interrupted. "The NEMESIS platforms require enormous energy reserves and can't be deployed continuously. The spatial distortion drives overheat after prolonged use. We bloodied their nose, but the real fight is coming. And you need, what? Tactical advice? From someone whose military was dismantled by yours in less than a standard year." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Doctor." Novak's expression softened slightly. "Not tactical advice. Cultural insight. The Kravox have never retreated, never negotiated, never shown any behavior except consume and advance. We need to understand if that's a biological imperative or a cultural choice. Can they be reasoned with under the right circumstances, or are they truly as mindlessly aggressive as they appear? And if they can't be reasoned with," her eyes hardened, "then humanity will do what it does best when backed into a corner. We will evolve faster than our enemy can comprehend, and we will eliminate the threat permanently." The way she said permanently sent chills through all my appendages that I agreed to help them. What choice did I have? If the Kravox continued their advance, my world would eventually be in their path too. Better the devils I knew than the ones who consumed everything in their path. The next few weeks were a blur of analysis and research. Working with human xenobiologists and military strategists, I helped compile a comprehensive assessment of the Kravox. The picture that emerged was disturbing. They weren't mindless consumers. They were coldly, calculatingly pragmatic. Their entire civilization was built around the principle of maximum efficiency. They didn't strip planets out of malice or hunger, but because their social calculus determined it was the most resource-efficient approach. Why negotiate for what you can simply take? Why leave potential enemies alive when eliminating them costs fewer resources in the long term? It was the mathematics of conquest taken to its logical extreme. When I presented these findings to the Human Leadership Council, a group that included both military commanders and civilian scientists, their reaction surprised me. "So they are following a logical algorithm," said Admiral Blackwell, nodding as if this confirmed something she'd suspected. "Good. Algorithms can be disrupted. How do you disrupt the fundamental nature of a species?" I asked at a human I hadn't met before, a man introduced as Dr. Hikaru Sato, head of the Xenopsychology Division, smiled thinly. "By changing the inputs to their equation. If their behavior is driven by ruthless efficiency, we need to make efficiency and conquest mutually exclusive. The plan they developed was audacious, terrifying, and utterly, uniquely human. Rather than confront the main Kravox fleet directly, humanity would change the rules of engagement entirely. They would exploit the one vulnerability my analysis had identified: the Kravox reliance on absolute cost-benefit calculation. 3 weeks later, as the main Kravox armada approached the border of human space, humanity sprung their trap. The IT began with a transmission broadcast on all frequencies the Kravox were known to monitor. President Jackson himself delivered the message: "Attention, Kravox Dominion. We understand your imperatives. We understand efficiency. We offer you a more efficient solution than conquest." What followed was a series of mathematical proofs and resource calculations demonstrating that conflict with humanity would result in catastrophic resource expenditure for minimal gain. The data included footage from the destruction of their advanced fleet, with precise energy measurements and resource costs. The transmission concluded with an unexpected offer: a designated solar system, uninhabited but resource-rich, freely given to the Kravox in exchange for non-aggression. IT was a gambit based on our analysis of Kravox psychology. They valued efficient acquisition over the process of conquest itself. If given a mathematically superior alternative to warfare, would they take it? For 3 tense days, there was no response. The Kravox fleet continued its advance, though at a somewhat reduced speed. Then, finally, a transmission: terse, practical, and distinctly Kravox in its lack of pleasantries. Proposal received. Calculations verified. Alternative acquisition path accepted conditionally. Verification required. It worked, or at least it bought time. The Kravox would investigate the offered system before committing to full-scale war. It wasn't peace, but it was a pause, something no other species had ever achieved with them. What the Kravox didn't know was that the system humanity offered, designation NGC 4729, was more than just a collection of resource-rich planets. It was a carefully constructed laboratory. Over the next month, as Kravox survey vessels began operations in NGC 4729, human scientists monitored every aspect of their behavior: how they organized extraction teams, how they prioritized resources, their communication patterns, their decision hierarchies. Every scrap of data fed into increasingly refined models of Kravox psychology and sociology. "We are building a mirror," Dr. Sato explained to me during one of our analysis sessions. "A perfect reflection of their own logic, which we can then use to predict and potentially reshape their behavior." "To what end?" I asked. "Even if they accept this system, they will eventually consume its resources and move on. You have only delayed the inevitable." Admiral Blackwell, who had been silently observing our work, spoke up. "Unless the experience changes them." I looked at her in confusion. "Changes them? How?" "NGC 4729 isn't just any system," she said, her expression unreadable. "The fourth planet contains trace elements of a compound we call substance K-12. Non-toxic, apparently useless, except for one property. It subtly alters neural pathways in Kravox physiology. Not enough to control them, but enough to gradually shift their cost-benefit analysis algorithms." I stared at her in horror. "You are reprogramming them?" "Without their knowledge. We are introducing a new variable into their equation," she corrected calmly. "Specifically, the capacity to value sustainability over immediate consumption. The ability to consider long-term cooperation as a viable strategy compared to conquest." That's... I struggled to find the right word. "Efficient," Dr. Sato supplied with a slight smile. "Far more efficient than warfare. More efficient even than their current strategy of consume and move on. We're simply helping them reach the logical conclusion their own values would eventually lead them to, just accelerated." I couldn't decide if this was the most brilliant or most terrifying approach I'd ever encountered. Perhaps it was both. 2 months into the Kravox occupation of NGC 4729, the first behavioral changes became apparent. Their extraction operations slowed. They began implementing sustainability protocols. Most shocking of all, they sent a communication requesting technical assistance with a geological survey. actual cooperation rather than simple resource extraction. It's working, Dr. Novak told me, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. K-12 is reshaping their neural pathways exactly as predicted. They are beginning to calculate resource efficiency across centuries rather than immediate gain. And they have no idea they are being manipulated. I asked. They wouldn't see it as manipulation, she replied. From their perspective, they are simply reaching more optimal conclusions based on complete data. We have just expanded their computational capacity. 6 months later, the main Kravox fleet changed course. Rather than continuing toward human space, they began establishing permanent extraction facilities in NGC 4729 with unprecedented attention to sustainable harvesting techniques. 1 year after first contact with the Kravox, humanity negotiated the first ever non-aggression pact with the Dominion. The terms were purely practical, exactly what you'd expect from the Kravox. But the very fact that negotiation occurred at all was revolutionary. Which brings me to today and why I have decided to emerge from my bunker and share this record with the galaxy at large. Humanity has achieved what no species thought possible. They have reshaped an implacable enemy without destroying them. Not through overwhelming firepower, though they certainly demonstrated that capability, but through an understanding of their adversary so complete that they could actually altering their fundamental nature. 3 days ago, I was summoned to Earth, actually invited, not coerced or captured. They wanted me to witness something that in the Grand United Earth Government Assembly Hall, representatives from 17 species, including my own collective, and, most surprisingly, the Kravox, gathered to sign what's being called the Galactic Concordat, a framework for interspecies relations that prioritizes mutual survival and sustainable development over conquest and competition. I watched President Jackson, Admiral Blackwell, and the Kravox overseer sign the document. Dr. Novak leaned over to me. "This is what we have been working toward all along," she whispered. "Not victory through destruction, but victory through transformation, both of ourselves and others. How can you be sure it will last?" I asked. The Kravox neural modifications, the power dynamics, it all seems so fragile. She smiled, a genuine smile, not the predatory one I'd seen when they were preparing for war. "Because we're not enforcing this. We are all choosing it, including the Kravox. Their altered neural pathways didn't force this decision. They simply allowed them to see the logic of cooperation that their previous programming obscured." As the ceremony concluded, President Jackson approached me. Up close, he looked older than in the transmissions, the weight of his decisions etched into the lines around his eyes. "Your reports were invaluable," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture, "both in understanding the collective and in helping us find a non-destructive solution with the Kravox." I awkwardly returned the handshake with one of my upper appendages. "I still don't understand. You had the military might to annihilate both our species. Why go to such lengths to avoid it?" Jackson's expression turned solemn. "Because we have been down that road before on our own world. Complete victory through overwhelming force isn't victory at all. It's just a postponement of a next conflict." He gestured to the assembled representatives. "Look around. Every species here has a unique perspective, unique strengths. Together, we are far more powerful than any of us could be alone. That's the secret we discovered through our own bloody history. True power comes from turning potential enemies into allies. And if the Kravox modifications fail, if they revert to their old patterns..." I couldn't help asking. The president's smile turned cold for just a moment, a reminder of the steel beneath the diplomacy. "Then we still have the NEMESIS Platforms," he said quietly. "But we are betting we won't need them again. The mathematics of cooperation are simply too compelling once you understand them fully." As I prepare to transmit this record throughout the galaxy, I find myself reflecting on how thoroughly I misunderstood humans in my early studies. I categorized them as aggressive, territorial, and dangerous, which they certainly can be. What I failed to grasp was the complexity beneath those traits. Humans are not simply warriors or diplomats, conquerors or peacemakers. They are all these things simultaneously, capable of shifting between these modes with astonishing adaptability. When they unleashed their full military might against the Kravok's advanced fleet, I thought I was witnessing the true face of humanity, but I was wrong. The true face of humanity is the species that could annihilate an enemy, but chooses instead to transform them. The species that views even the most implacable foe as a potential ally, given the right adjustments to perspective. Perhaps that is what makes them so uniquely dangerous and valuable in this galaxy. They understand violence and peace as two tools in the same toolkit, to be applied with surgical precision depending on the problem at hand. My final assessment as xenoanthropologist for the collective. Humanity should never be underestimated, but not for the reasons we originally feared. Their greatest weapon isn't their NEMESIS platforms or phase shift drives or gravitational manipulators. It's their ability to reshape reality, including the very nature of their adversaries, to align with their vision of how the universe should function. They don't adapt to the galaxy. They make the galaxy adapt to them. And perhaps most terrifying of all, they're convincing enough that we're starting to think they are right. This is Taz'Korr, former observer of humanity, signing what may be my final report. Though given humanity's influence on galactic affairs, I suspect my services as a human expert will be in high demand for centuries to come. Just remember, if you're thinking about challenging them, consider your options very carefully. Because when humans say, finally, a reason to get really nasty, what they actually mean is, we have been holding back until now. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens when they stop holding back.